You inherit nothing. The words fell like a guillotine blade in the silence of her father's study. Elara Vance stood perfectly still, 23 years of invisibility finally crystallizing into absolute erasure. Her stepmother's smile was venomous triumph. Her half-siblings smirked from their velvet chairs. The lawyer wouldn't meet her eyes. Then the door exploded inward. A man in black filled the doorway, tall, scarred, terrifying. Duke Caspian Ashford, the kingdom's most feared nobleman, crossed the room in 3 strides and spoke words that shattered everything. She inherits me. Stay until the end to see how a girl with nothing becomes a woman who claims everything. Like and comment which city you're watching from. The reading of the will began at precisely 3 o'clock, as if even death had to obey father's obsession with punctuality. Elara sat in the corner, her corner, always her corner, hands folded in her lap, breathing shallow and silent. 23 years in this house had taught her the art of taking up no space, of being present without existing, of surviving by becoming a ghost. The lawyer's voice droned through the afternoon light filtering through the study's stained glass windows. Red light fell across the mahogany desk where her father had sat for decades, building his merchant empire, while his youngest daughter scrubbed floors 3 rooms away. To my beloved wife, Marguerite Vance, I leave the estate of Thornhaven and all properties therein. Marguerite's perfectly painted lips curved upward. She sat in father's chair now, had claimed it within hours of his death 3 days ago. Her black mourning dress was silk, custom-tailored, cut to accentuate rather than conceal. Grief as performance art. To my son, Richard Vance, I leave controlling interest in Vance Trading Company. Richard leaned back, fingers steepled, already calculating. He was 32, handsome in the way wealthy men often are. Well-fed, well-dressed, confident in his inheritance of the world. To my daughter, Isabel Vance, I leave the summer residence in Belmere and an annual allowance of 10,000 crowns. Isabel examined her nails, bored. At 26, she'd already received more in birthday gifts than most families earned in a lifetime. The lawyer's voice continued, cataloging wealth, dividing an empire. Elara listened to her father's legacy being distributed like cards in a game she'd never been invited to play. She told herself she expected nothing, had expected nothing for years. But hope is a stubborn, stupid thing. It had whispered in the darkest moments. Maybe this time. Maybe in death he'll acknowledge what he couldn't in life. And to Elara, the room went silent. Every eye turned to her corner. The lawyer cleared his throat, adjusted his spectacles. Read the words that would change everything. To Elara Vance, daughter of my late first wife, Catherine, I leave nothing. She has been provided for sufficiently during my lifetime and shall receive no further inheritance. This is my final word on the matter. The paper rustled as he set it down. Elara's hands remained folded in her lap. Her face remained calm. She'd learned long ago not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her break, but inside something crumbled. The last fragile hope that somewhere, buried beneath years of indifference and cruelty, her father had harbored even a thread of love for the daughter who shared his blood. Nothing, Marguerite said, savoring the word like fine wine. How appropriate. The bastard finally admits it in writing, Richard added, laughing. All those years pretending she was family. I always wondered why he kept her, Isabel mused. Charity has limits. The lawyer gathered his papers, clearly uncomfortable, but not uncomfortable enough to object. He'd been paid well to read these words. Conscience cost extra. Elara stood. Smooth, practiced movements. No trembling. If that's all, she said quietly, I'll begin packing my things. Oh, don't be dramatic, Marguerite said, waving a dismissive hand. You may stay in the servants' quarters for a reasonable period while you secure other arrangements. 2 weeks should suffice. How generous, Mother, Richard said. I'd have given her 3 days. She's not going to the servants' quarters, Isabel said. She's lived there her whole life anyway. We'll just make it official. They laughed together. A family united in cruelty. Elara turned to leave. Pride was all she had left, and she wouldn't surrender it here. Although, Marguerite's voice stopped her at the door, sharp as a blade. There is one small matter to discuss. Elara didn't turn around. What matter? Your mother's jewelry. The pieces Catherine brought to her marriage. Now Elara did turn. Those belong to me. Father said, Your father is dead, Marguerite interrupted, smiling. And technically, those pieces became marital property, which means they fall under my inheritance. They were my mother's. They were your mother's dowry. There's a difference. Marguerite opened a drawer in the desk, pulled out a familiar velvet box. This ruby necklace alone is worth a small fortune. Did you really think we'd let you walk away with it? Elara's calm finally cracked. You have everything. The house, the money, the company. You're taking the only thing I have left of her? I'm taking what's legally mine. Marguerite's smile widened. Unless you'd like to contest the will, I'm sure you have resources for an extended legal battle. The cruelty was surgical, precise. Marguerite knew exactly what she was doing, not just taking the jewelry, but forcing Elara to acknowledge her own powerlessness. That's what I thought, Marguerite said into Elara's silence. You were always so good at knowing your place. Elara's nails cut crescents into her palms. Every instinct screamed to fight, to rage, to burn this room down around them. But what was the point? She'd lost before the game even started. 2 weeks, she said. Then I'm gone. She reached for the door handle. The door exploded inward, not opened, not knocked upon, shattered off its hinges with a sound like thunder, wood splintering, brass fittings scattering across the expensive carpet. A man stood in the doorway. No, a force of nature in the shape of a man. Duke Caspian Ashford was 6.5 feet of contained violence wrapped in black wool and barely controlled rage. His coat was travel-stained, his dark hair wild from riding, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow and down his cheek like a lightning strike frozen in flesh. He was the kingdom's most decorated military commander, the youngest duke in 3 centuries, and, according to every rumor Elara had ever heard, absolutely terrifying. The room froze. Marguerite went pale. Richard actually stood up, hand moving toward a letter opener as if that would help. Isabel made a small sound of fear. The Duke's eyes swept the room with the efficiency of a predator cataloging prey. Then they landed on Elara. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe. Or confirmation. Elara Vance, he said. Not a question. Yes. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. He crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopped directly in front of her. This close, he was overwhelming, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, broad-shouldered, radiating heat, and barely leashed power. Your Grace, the lawyer stammered, finding his voice. This is highly irregular. Be silent, the Duke said without looking at him. The lawyer was silent. The Duke pulled a document from inside his coat, unfolded it, set it on the desk where Marguerite sat. Read it, he commanded. Marguerite stared at the paper like it might bite. I don't understand. Then let me clarify. The Duke's voice could have cut glass. That is a binding contract signed and sealed 17 years ago by your late husband and myself. In it, he promises his youngest daughter in marriage to me in exchange for certain financial considerations that saved his business from bankruptcy. The room went absolutely silent. Elara felt the world tilt sideways. That's impossible, Richard said. Father would never— Your father was desperate, the Duke interrupted. I was young and needed a political alliance. The contract is legal, witnessed, and enforceable. Marguerite grabbed the document, scanned it, her face draining of color with each line. This can't be legal, she whispered. It's perfectly legal, the Duke said. Your husband borrowed 50,000 crowns to save his company. The terms were clear. The debt would be forgiven in exchange for a marriage contract with his youngest daughter when she came of age. She's 23, Isabel said stupidly. Precisely. The Duke's eyes never left Elara's face. Which means the contract is now enforceable. She comes with me. Today. Elara's mind reeled. This couldn't be real. Her father had sold her. 17 years ago, before she could walk, he'd traded her like property? No, Marguerite said, recovering. Absolutely not. This is medieval. We'll contest it in court. Contest it, the Duke said mildly. But understand that doing so means the debt becomes immediately payable. 50,000 crowns, plus 17 years of compound interest. He smiled, and it was terrifying. Current value, approximately 230,000 crowns. Richard went white. That would bankrupt us. Yes, the Duke agreed. It would. So you have a choice. Honor the contract and walk away with your inheritance intact, or fight it and lose everything. Marguerite looked at the paper, at the Duke, at Elara. Elara saw the calculation in her stepmother's eyes, saw her weighing options, saw her arrive at the obvious conclusion. Take her, Marguerite said, pushing the paper away like it was contaminated. She's yours. Just like that. No hesitation, no consideration for Elara's wishes or feelings or humanity. Of course, Marguerite added, voice dripping venom. We'll need confirmation that the contract is genuine. Surely your grace won't object to proper verification. The seal is verified, the lawyer interrupted, examining the document with shaking hands. The signatures are witnessed. This is legitimate. Then we're done here, the Duke said. He turned to Elara. Gather your things. We leave within the hour. Elara stared at him, at the stranger who'd just claimed her like a forgotten package. I don't, she started. Within the hour, he repeated. Firm, but not cruel. An order, but not a threat. Then he turned on his heel and walked out, leaving the shattered door hanging on its hinges and the Vance family in stunned silence. Elara looked at Marguerite, at Richard, at Isabel, at the family that had never been family. I guess I won't need those 2 weeks after all, she said quietly. Then she walked out. Her room was in the attic, 3 flights up, tucked under the eaves where the ceiling slanted so low she had to duck near the walls. It had been the servant's storage before Marguerite decided even that was too good for her. Elara owned almost nothing. A few dresses, all gray or brown, a hairbrush missing half its bristles, a single book, a collection of poetry her mother had loved, the only thing father hadn't been able to take because he didn't know she had it. She packed everything into a canvas bag in less than 10 minutes, then sat on the narrow bed and tried to understand what had just happened. Sold. She'd been sold. At 6 years old, before her mother's grave had settled, her father had traded her to clear a debt. The cruelty of it was almost artistic. He'd never loved her, never wanted her, but he'd kept her anyway, not out of duty or guilt, but because she was collateral on a loan. She laughed, couldn't help it. A harsh, broken sound in the empty room. Miss Vance? A young maid stood in the doorway. Clara, one of the few servants who'd ever shown her kindness. The Duke's carriage is ready, Clara said. Then quieter. Are you all right? I don't know, Elara said honestly. I don't know what I am. Clara stepped inside, closed the door. I heard what happened about the contract. Everyone's heard by now, I imagine. The staff is divided. Some think you're lucky. The Duke is wealthy, powerful. Clara hesitated. Others think he's dangerous. What do you think? I think, Clara said carefully, that anything is better than here. Elara looked around the tiny room, at the water-stained ceiling, the cracked window, the door that didn't lock. She'd spent 23 years surviving in this house, making herself small, making herself invisible, hoping that if she just endured long enough, it would get better. It never got better. You're right, she said, standing. Let's go. The carriage was black lacquered wood with the Ashford crest, a silver lion on a midnight field, emblazoned on the door. 2 matched black horses stamped impatiently. A driver sat rigid in the seat, and 2 armed guards flanked the carriage. The Duke stood beside it, speaking with a tall man in military uniform. He looked up as Elara approached. That's all you have? He asked, noting her single bag. I travel light. Something flickered in his expression, not quite pity, maybe understanding. He opened the carriage door himself. Get in, it's a 4-hour journey. Elara climbed inside. The interior was all dark leather and polished wood, soft cushions, windows with actual glass, not waxed paper. A small lamp already lit against the gathering dusk. The Duke climbed in after her, settling on the opposite bench. His presence filled the small space. The carriage lurched into motion. For several minutes they rode in silence. Elara watched through the window as Thornhaven, the only home she'd ever known, receded into the distance. Felt nothing, no grief, no relief, just emptiness. "You must have questions," the Duke said. Elara turned to look at him. In the lamplight, his scar was even more pronounced, a brutal thing that should have been disfiguring but somehow wasn't. "Why now?" she asked. "If the contract was signed 17 years ago, why enforce it today? Your father's death activated certain clauses. The contract specified marriage when you came of age, or upon his death, whichever came later. So you waited." "I didn't wait. I didn't even remember the contract until my solicitor brought it to my attention last month." "You forgot you'd purchased a wife?" His jaw tightened. "It was a business arrangement made by my father and yours. I was 16, barely aware of what was being signed. By the time I inherited the duchy at 20, I had other concerns. The scar, the military service, whatever battles had turned a boy into this hard, controlled man." "And now?" Elara pressed. "What are your concerns now?" "My title requires an heir. I'm 33 and unwed. The contract provides a solution." "How romantic," she said dryly. "I'm not offering romance. I'm offering a transaction. You marry me, provide the duchy with an heir, and in return you receive wealth, status, protection, and freedom from that house. A gilded cage instead of an iron one. Perhaps, but the gilding is considerably more comfortable." Elara studied him. He was being honest, at least. No pretense of affection or attraction, just cold, pragmatic arrangement. "What if I refuse?" she asked. "You can't." "You'd force me?" "No." He met her eyes. "But if you refuse, the contract is void, the debt becomes payable, and your family loses everything. I'm told your brother has been managing the company poorly. Without their inheritance, they'll be bankrupt within 6 months. You think I care what happens to them?" "I think," he said quietly, "that you're a better person than they deserve, and you'll hate yourself if you let them fall, even after everything they've done." He was right. Damn him. He was right. Even now, even after today, some stupid part of her couldn't quite let go of the hope that family meant something. "So I'm trapped," she said. "We're both trapped," he corrected. "This arrangement serves us both. We make the best of it." The carriage rolled on through the darkening countryside. Elara leaned back against the cushions, exhaustion finally catching up with her. "When?" she asked. "The wedding?" "Yes. 2 weeks. We'll post the banns, arrange the ceremony. Society requires certain formalities. And after? After, you'll live at Ashford Manor. You'll have your own quarters, your own staff. I spend most of my time in the capital or traveling on duchy business. We'll see each other rarely. Except when you need that heir." His expression didn't change. "Except then." Elara closed her eyes, tried to imagine it. A marriage of convenience to a man she didn't know, didn't love, producing children in a transaction as cold as any business deal. But when she opened her eyes and looked at the Duke, at his scarred face, his rigid control, the loneliness he didn't quite hide, she saw something familiar. A survivor. Like her. "All right," she said. "I'll marry you." "I know," he said. "You never had a choice." "Neither did you." For the first time, something almost like a smile touched his lips. "No, neither did I." The carriage rolled on into the night, carrying them both toward a future neither had chosen, bound together by a contract signed when they were children. Strangers becoming spouses in a transaction that felt less like a wedding and more like a merger of two damaged souls. But as Thornhaven disappeared completely behind them, and Elara watched the stars emerge in the dark sky, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope, exactly, but possibility. For 23 years, she'd survived by making herself invisible, by accepting less than nothing and learning to live in the spaces between other people's lives. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. Maybe it was time to claim the space she'd been denied. And if this Duke thought he was getting a quiet, obedient wife who would fade into the background of his life, he was in for a surprise. Elara Vance had inherited nothing her entire life. But starting tonight, she was going to inherit herself. And that was going to have to be enough. Ashford Manor rose from the hillside like a fortress pretending to be a home. Gray stone walls 3 stories high, narrow windows that looked more defensive than decorative, towers at each corner topped with iron spikes. As the carriage rolled through the gates, Elara understood immediately what kind of man the Duke was. A soldier who never stopped fighting. The staff lined up in the courtyard, 30 people at least, standing rigid as the carriage stopped, maids in black and white, footmen in silver livery. A stern-faced woman at the front who could only be the housekeeper. "That's Mrs. Holloway," the Duke said, climbing out first and offering Elara his hand. "She runs the household. What she says is law." Elara took his hand, stepped down. Every eye was on her, judging, measuring, finding her lacking. She knew that look, had seen it her entire life. "Mrs. Holloway," the Duke said, "this is Miss Vance. She'll be the Duchess in 2 weeks. See that she has everything she needs." Mrs. Holloway's expression could have frozen water. "Of course, Your Grace." She turned to Elara, gave the shallowest curtsy possible. "Miss." "Not welcome." The word hung unspoken in the air. "Show her to the Rose Suite," the Duke continued. "Have the maids prepare it fully. Miss Vance has traveled far and needs rest." "The Rose Suite is not prepared for guests, Your Grace. Perhaps the East Wing." "The Rose Suite," the Duke repeated, voice flat. "Is that a problem?" Mrs. Holloway's jaw tightened. "No, Your Grace." "Good. I'll be in my study. See that I'm not disturbed." He glanced at Elara. "Rest tonight. We'll discuss arrangements in the morning." Then he was gone, striding across the courtyard and disappearing into the manor without looking back. Elara stood alone among the staff, feeling their stares like knives. "This way," Mrs. Holloway said coldly, turning on her heel. Elara followed her through corridors that seemed designed to intimidate. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, portraits of stern-faced ancestors glaring from the walls. The Rose Suite was on the 2nd floor, a series of interconnected rooms that were larger than the entire attic she'd lived in at Thornhaven. "Your bedroom," Mrs. Holloway said, opening doors with crisp efficiency. Dressing room, private sitting room, bathing chamber. Each room was announced like an accusation. "It's lovely," Elara said quietly. It was the late Duchess's suite. The Duke's mother. Mrs. Holloway's tone made it clear what she thought of Elara occupying it. "I'll send maids to help you settle." "That won't be necessary. I can manage." "You'll have maids," Mrs. Holloway said sharply. "The Duke's wife doesn't dress herself like a commoner. 2 girls will attend you. Don't expect friendship from them." "I don't expect anything from anyone," Elara said, meeting the woman's hostile gaze. "I learned that lesson a long time ago." Something shifted in Mrs. Holloway's expression. Not warmth, but perhaps a thread of respect. "Dinner is at 8. Formal dress. Can you manage that, or shall I send someone to help?" "I'll manage." Mrs. Holloway left without another word. Elara stood in the center of the Rose Suite. Her suite now, apparently. And tried to breathe. The bedroom alone was 3 times the size of her attic room. A 4-poster bed with silk curtains, a fireplace already lit, windows overlooking gardens she could barely see in the darkness. She walked to the dressing room, opened the wardrobes. Empty, of course. All she had were the 3 gray dresses in her canvas bag. A knock at the door. "Come in." 2 young maids entered, both looking terrified. They couldn't have been more than 16. "Mrs. Holloway sent us to attend you, miss," the taller one said. "I'm Anne. This is Molly." "I don't need attending," Elara said gently. "You can go." "Please, miss," Molly whispered. "If we go back without helping, she'll have our positions." Elara understood immediately. Mrs. Holloway was testing her, seeing if the Duke's new wife would be cruel to the staff, give her ammunition to turn the household against Elara. "All right," Elara said. "I need a bath and help with my hair. Can you manage that?" The relief on their faces was profound. An hour later, Elara sat in the copper tub while Anne poured warm water over her hair and Molly sorted through the pitifully small collection of dresses. "Miss," Molly said hesitantly, "these are..." I mean, you'll need proper gowns for dinner and the wedding and... I know, Elara said. I have nothing appropriate. Mrs. Holloway won't like it if you come to dinner dressed wrong, Anne said. She'll use it against you. Against me how? The girls exchanged glances. The staff doesn't want you here, Molly admitted. They think you're... They heard about the contract, about your family. They think you're trying to trap the Duke. I see. Elara closed her eyes as Anne rinsed soap from her hair. What do you think? I think, Anne said carefully, that you seem kind, and kindness is rare here. The Duke isn't kind? The Duke is just, Molly said, but just isn't the same as kind. Elara absorbed this. Tell me about him, the truth. The girls hesitated, then Anne spoke. He's been alone since his mother died 10 years ago, fought in the border wars, came back scarred and hard. He's fair to the staff, pays well, never raises his voice, but he's distant, like he's built walls around himself and won't let anyone in. Does he have friends, confidants? His military advisor, Colonel Thorne. They serve together. Otherwise, Anne shrugged. He works. That's all he does. Manages the duchy, handles politics in the capital, solves problems. But he doesn't live. Not really. A lonely man in a fortress. Elara understood that more than she wanted to admit. After the bath, the girls helped her dress in the least worn of her gray dresses. It was still clearly servant's attire, but it was clean and fit properly. You can't wear this to dinner, Molly said desperately. Mrs. Holloway will... Let her, Elara said calmly. I have nothing else. If she wants to judge me for being poor, that says more about her than me. Anne smiled despite herself. You're braver than you look, miss. I've had a lot of practice being underestimated. The dining room was meant to seat 40. Long table, crystal chandeliers, more of those disapproving ancestor portraits. The Duke sat at the head, still in his travel clothes, reading correspondence while he waited. He looked up as Elara entered, his eyes taking in her simple dress without comment. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair at the opposite end of the table, a mile away practically. Elara sat. A footman immediately appeared to pour wine. Another brought the first course. They ate in silence for several minutes. The food was excellent. Roasted pheasant, glazed vegetables, fresh bread. But the distance between them made conversation absurd. Finally, Elara stood. What are you doing? The Duke asked. Coming closer. I'm not shouting across a ballroom to have dinner conversation. She picked up her plate and wine glass, walked the length of the table, and sat in the chair to his right. The footman looked scandalized. The Duke's expression didn't change. That's the Duchess's traditional seat, he said. Then I'm practicing. Something that might have been amusement flickered in his eyes. Bold. Practical. Now we can actually talk. About what? About what happens next. You said we'd discuss arrangements. The Duke set down his fork, gave her his full attention. The wedding will be in 2 weeks. Small ceremony, immediate family only, yours and mine. I have no family. Then just mine. My aunt will attend. She's formidable. She'll expect you to know proper etiquette, household management, social graces. I don't know any of those things, Elara said bluntly. I was raised in an attic and taught to scrub floors. If you're expecting a refined duchess, you're going to be disappointed. Then you'll learn. I'm hiring instructors, starting tomorrow. Instructors. Etiquette, dance, deportment, household management, basic politics, everything you need to function in society. Elara set down her wine glass carefully. You're going to train me like a dog. I'm going to educate you so you aren't humiliated in public, he corrected. High society is vicious. They'll tear you apart if you show weakness. I won't have my wife made a spectacle. Your wife, Elara repeated. That's all I am to you, a role to fill. Yes. The honesty was brutal, but Elara preferred brutal honesty to kind lies. Fine, she said. I'll learn your rules, play your part, but I want something in return. His eyebrows rose slightly. You're negotiating? You said this was a transaction. Transactions go both ways. He leaned back, studying her. What do you want? Freedom. Real freedom. not just a prettier cage. I want my own income, separate from yours. I want the right to leave the manor without permission, and I want a library card to the duchy archives. Why the archives? Because I like to read, and I've never had access to books before. The Duke was silent for a long moment. The income I can arrange. A quarterly allowance in your name. The freedom of movement is more complicated. You'll be the Duchess. You can't just wander the countryside alone. Then give me a guard, but don't make me a prisoner. And the archives? Are they forbidden? No, I just didn't expect you to ask for that. You expected jewelry, Elara guessed. Dresses, pretty things to make me compliant. Yes. I'm not interested in pretty things. I'm interested in not being ignorant anymore. He nodded slowly. All right, you'll have all three. Anything else? Elara hesitated, then pushed forward. I want to know why you really enforced the contract. The truth, not the political necessity, excuse. The Duke's expression closed off immediately. That's not part of the negotiation. Then I'm making it part. You're asking me to marry you, share your bed, give you children. The least you can do is tell me why now. Why not 5 years ago, or 5 years from now? Why did you suddenly remember a contract you'd forgotten for 17 years? His jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he'd refuse to answer. Then he spoke, voice low. Because I'm tired of being alone. Because building walls and staying distant was supposed to keep me safe, but all it's done is make me empty. And because when my solicitor showed me that contract and I realized I had a legal path to marriage that didn't require courting or romance or pretending to feel things I don't know how to feel anymore, it seemed like a solution. The raw honesty stunned her into silence. You wanted the truth, he said. There it is. I'm broken in ways I don't know how to fix, and this arrangement seemed easier than trying to convince someone to love me. Elara looked at this hard, scarred man across the table, this duke who commanded armies and managed a duchy but couldn't manage his own loneliness, and felt something shift inside her, recognition, kinship. Two people damaged in different ways, trying to survive. I can't love you, she said quietly. I don't know how. They beat that out of me a long time ago. I know. But I can respect you. I can be honest with you. And I can try to make this work. That's all I'm asking. They looked at each other across the small space between their chairs, two strangers negotiating a life together with the cold precision of a business merger. Then we have an agreement, Elara said. I'll be your Duchess. You'll give me freedom, and we'll both try not to make each other miserable. The Duke raised his wine glass. To low expectations. Elara clinked her glass against his, the only kind worth having. They drank. The first honest moment they'd shared. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The next morning, Elara's education began. Lady Margrave arrived at precisely 9 o'clock, a stick-thin woman of 60 with steel-gray hair and eyes like chips of ice. She was the duchy's etiquette instructor, imported from the capital specifically to teach Elara how to be a duchess in 2 weeks. Let me see you walk, Lady Margrave commanded the moment she entered the Rose Suite. Elara walked across the room. Appalling! You slouch like a scullery maid. Shoulders back, chin up, steps measured. A duchess glides. She doesn't shuffle. For 3 hours, Lady Margrave drilled her on posture, movement, how to enter a room, how to sit, how to stand. Every correction was delivered with cutting precision. You'll never pass for nobility, Lady Margrave said during their brief lunch break. The best we can hope for is that you won't embarrass the Duke completely. I don't intend to embarrass anyone, Elara said evenly. Intent is irrelevant. You're marrying the most eligible bachelor in the kingdom. Every woman in society will hate you on principle. They'll be watching for any mistake, any weakness, and they'll destroy you for it. Then I won't give them ammunition. Lady Margrave's eyes narrowed. You have spine. Good. You'll need it. After etiquette came household management with Mrs. Holloway, who clearly resented having to teach Elara anything but followed the Duke's orders. She walked Elara through the manor's operations, staff schedules, budget management, menu planning, inventory. The Duchess traditionally oversees all household decisions, Mrs. Holloway said coldly. But given your background, I'll continue managing most operations unless you object. I don't object to competence, Elara said, but I will learn the systems. I won't be a figurehead in my own home. Mrs. Holloway's expression flickered. You think this will be your home? The Duke seems to think so. The Duke isn't here most of the year. When he's gone, this is my domain. Remember that. It was a clear line in the sand. Mrs. Holloway ran this manor, and she wasn't about to surrender control to some upstart girl from nowhere. Elara filed that information away. Battles were won with strategy, not emotion. The afternoon brought dance instruction from a patient young man named Mr. Wesley, who taught her basic ballroom steps with far more kindness than Lady Margrave had shown. You're doing well, he said encouragingly as Elara stumbled through a waltz. Most beginners take weeks to learn this. I'm a quick study when motivated by terror, Elara said. He laughed. There's a ball in 3 weeks, after the wedding, the Duke's formal introduction of you to society. Wonderful, a room full of people waiting to see me fail. Focus on the Duke, Mr. Wesley advised. He's an excellent dancer. Let him lead, follow his steps, and ignore everyone else. Does he actually attend balls? Rarely, but he will for this one. Duty requires it. Everything in the Duke's life seemed to be duty. Elara wondered if he'd ever done anything just because he wanted to. That evening she found out. After dinner, eaten again at a more reasonable distance after Elara simply moved her place setting without asking permission, she wandered the manor. Most of it was still unfamiliar, a maze of corridors and locked doors. She found the library on the second floor. 3 stories of books, spiral staircases connecting the levels, windows overlooking the gardens. It was the most beautiful room she'd ever seen. And the Duke was there. He sat in a leather chair near the fire, reading, still in his shirt sleeves. He looked younger without his formal coat, more human. I'm sorry, Elara said from the doorway. I didn't know you were here. You can stay, he said without looking up from his book. It's your library too. Elara ventured inside, running her fingers along the spines. Philosophy, history, military strategy, poetry, thousands of volumes. You can actually read all of these, she said, wonder in her voice. Most of them. Some are reference texts. He glanced at her. You really love books. I had one book my entire childhood. I read it so many times I memorized it. What book? Poetry anthology. My mother's. The Duke set down his book, stood, scanned the shelves, pulled down a slim volume and handed it to her. Start with this. Collected Works of Saren Vale, Best Modern Poet in the Kingdom. Elara took the book like it was made of glass. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. Everything here is yours. She sat in the chair opposite his, opened the book, lost herself in words. For a while they read in comfortable silence, the first peaceful moment since she'd arrived. Can I ask you something? She said eventually. Depends on the question. Why do you stay away from here so much? This manor is beautiful. The library alone is worth living here for. The Duke stared into the fire. Because this was my parents' house. My mother died here, and every room reminds me that I failed to save her. Elara went still. How did she die? Illness, long and painful. I was at war when she got sick. By the time I returned, it was too late. She died 3 days after I arrived. His voice was flat, emotionless. She asked me to come home earlier. I thought my duty was to the front lines. I was wrong. That wasn't your fault, wasn't it? I chose military glory over my own mother. You chose what you thought was right at the time. That's all anyone can do. He looked at her with those dark, guarded eyes. You're very forgiving for someone who was abandoned by her own father. I'm not forgiving. I'm realistic. People fail each other. Holding on to anger about it doesn't change anything. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. They lapsed back into silence, but it felt different now. Less like 2 strangers occupying the same space, more like 2 people who understood something about each other. The 2 weeks before the wedding passed in a blur of lessons and adjustments. Elara absorbed information like she'd been starved for it. Etiquette rules, household procedures, duchy politics. Lady Margrave remained cutting, but grudgingly admitted Elara was improving. Mrs. Holloway stayed hostile, but Elara noticed small things. The way the housekeeper ensured Elara's rooms were always perfectly maintained, The way she corrected servants who spoke dismissively about the new Duchess. Actions that contradicted her cold words. The Duke himself remained distant but present. He joined her for dinner most evenings, discussed her progress with the instructors, answered questions about duchy business when she asked. They'd settled into a strange partnership, not warm, but functional. Then, 3 days before the wedding, everything changed. A carriage arrived bearing the Duke's aunt, Lady Cordelia Ashford. She swept into the manor like a hurricane made of silk and steel, a woman of 50 with silver-streaked black hair, sharp features, and the bearing of someone who'd never been told no in her life. "Where is she?" Lady Cordelia demanded the moment she entered. "Where's this girl my nephew is marrying?" Elara stood in the entrance hall, spine straight, chin up, all Lady Margrave's training coming into play. Lady Cordelia's eyes raked over her from head to toe, judging, measuring. She said. "Better than I expected. At least you're not cowering." "Your Grace," Elara said, curtsying exactly as taught. "Don't grovel. I hate groveling." Lady Cordelia circled her like a predator. "I've heard about you. Poor relation, raised in poverty, purchased via contract. Society is already sharpening their knives." "I'm aware." "Are you? Do you have any idea what you're walking into? The Ashford name is one of the oldest in the kingdom. The Duke is a war hero, a political force. And you're a nobody from nowhere who's about to stand beside him and claim equality." "I'm not claiming anything," Elara said steadily. "I'm fulfilling a contract I didn't sign and making the best of circumstances I didn't choose." Lady Cordelia's eyes narrowed. "You have spine. Good. You'll need it." She turned to Mrs. Holloway. "Take me to my rooms. I'm staying until after the wedding. Someone needs to make sure this disaster doesn't get worse." She swept upstairs, leaving Elara standing in the entrance hall. The Duke appeared from his study. "I apologize for my aunt. She's intense." "She's terrifying," Elara corrected. "That too." He almost smiled. "But she's right about one thing. Society is going to be vicious. The ball after the wedding will be your trial by fire." "I'll survive. I've survived worse." "Have you?" Elara met his eyes. "I spent 23 years invisible in a house full of people who wished I was dead. I think I can handle some aristocrats with sharp tongues." The Duke studied her for a long moment. "You're stronger than you look." "I've had to be," he nodded. "Come to my study. There's something I need to show you." She followed him to a room she'd never entered before. Dark wood, maps on the walls, a desk covered in correspondence. He pulled a wooden box from a drawer, opened it. Inside was a ring, gold band, emerald stone, intricate engraving. "My mother's wedding ring," he said. "You'll wear it at the ceremony." Elara stared at the ring. It was beautiful, and it represented everything she wasn't: legitimate, wanted, chosen. "I can't," she whispered. "You can. You will." He picked up the ring, held it out. "My mother would have liked you. She was kind, intelligent, stronger than anyone knew. You remind me of her." The comparison felt like too much. Elara's throat tightened. "Try it on," he said gently. She held out her hand. He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "3 more days," he said. "Then you'll be the Duchess of Ashford. Are you ready?" Elara looked at the ring, at this man who was about to become her husband, at the life spreading out before her, uncertain, dangerous, full of people waiting for her to fail. "No," she said honestly, "but I'll do it anyway." That's all anyone can ask. The wedding day arrived with gray skies and cold wind. Elara stood in the rose suite while Anne and Molly helped her into the wedding gown. White silk, simple lines, elegant without being ostentatious. Lady Cordelia had ordered it made in 2 days by the duchy's fastest seamstresses. "You look like a duchess," Anne said, tears in her eyes. "I look like I'm playing dress-up," Elara corrected, but she smiled. The ceremony was in the manor's chapel, small stone building at the edge of the grounds. Only Lady Cordelia, Mrs. Holloway, Colonel Thorne, and a handful of essential staff attended. Elara walked down the aisle alone. No father to give her away. No family to witness. Just her, walking toward a man she barely knew, promising her life to a stranger. The Duke stood at the altar in full formal dress, black coat, silver buttons, medals on his chest. He looked every inch the war hero, untouchable, unreachable. But when she reached him and their eyes met, she saw something that gave her courage. Fear. He was as terrified as she was. The ceremony was brief. Words spoken by rote, promises made in careful voices. When the priest said, "You may kiss the bride," the Duke leaned forward and pressed a chaste kiss to her lips, over in a heartbeat. "It's done," he whispered. "Yes," she whispered back. And just like that, Elara Vance ceased to exist. She was the Duchess of Ashford now. The wedding breakfast was awkward and formal. Lady Cordelia dominated conversation. Colonel Thorne remained mostly silent. Mrs. Holloway watched everything with sharp eyes. Then Lady Cordelia stood, tapping her glass. "A toast," she announced, "to the Duke and his new Duchess. May they weather the storm coming their way." "What storm?" Elara asked. Lady Cordelia smiled coldly. "The ball, my dear, 3 weeks from now. Every nobleman, politician, and social climber in the kingdom will attend, and they'll all be there to see one thing, whether you're worthy of the name you just claimed, whether the war hero's bride can stand beside him without crumbling." She raised her glass higher. "So here's to survival, because that's all you can hope for now." Elara felt the weight of those words settle over her like a shroud. The Duke's hand found hers under the table, squeezed once, a silent message. "You're not alone." She squeezed back. "Neither are you." Whatever storm was coming, they'd face it together. Two people who'd inherited nothing but pain, bound together by contract and desperation, pretending to be something they weren't. But maybe, just maybe, they could pretend their way into something real. The 3 weeks before the ball passed, like the calm before an execution. Elara threw herself into preparation with the desperation of a soldier training for war. Lady Margrave drilled her relentlessly on every social protocol, every subtle gesture that separated nobility from pretenders. Mr. Wesley taught her not just to dance, but to make it look effortless. Even Mrs. Holloway began offering grudging advice about which families to watch carefully, which matrons controlled social opinion, which young ladies would smile while plotting her destruction. "The Countess of Merrick will be your greatest threat," Mrs. Holloway said one afternoon as they reviewed the guest list. "She wanted the Duke for her daughter. She'll make an example of you if given the chance." "How?" Elara asked. Public humiliation disguised as concern. A carefully placed comment about your background, a question about etiquette you can't answer, anything to make you seem unworthy in front of everyone who matters. Elara studied the Countess's name on the list. "Then I'll have to be perfect." "You can't be perfect," Mrs. Holloway said bluntly. "You're not one of them. The best you can hope for is to survive the night without completely destroying the Duke's reputation." The words stung, but Elara had learned to use pain as fuel. She memorized every family connection, every political alliance, every piece of gossip Lady Cordelia shared. She practiced her posture until her back ached, her dancing until her feet bled, her smile until her face hurt. The Duke watched her preparations with something that might have been concern. "You don't have to do this," he said one evening in the library. "We could cancel the ball." "And confirm everyone's suspicion that I'm too inadequate to face society?" Elara shook her head. "No, I'll attend. I'll play my part." "This isn't a performance." "Everything in your world is a performance," she corrected. "You taught me that yourself. We're all playing roles. I'm just learning mine faster than most." He set down his book, studied her with those dark eyes that saw too much. "You've changed since the wedding." "Have I?" "You're harder, more guarded." "I'm adapting. Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted—" He stopped, jaw tightening. "I don't know what I wanted." Elara understood, because she didn't know either. In the 3 weeks since becoming the Duchess, something had shifted between them. They still maintained distance, still slept in separate chambers, still treated their marriage like a business arrangement. But there were moments, small, fleeting moments, when the walls cracked. Like when he'd found her crying in the library after a particularly brutal session with Lady Margrave, and instead of leaving, he'd sat beside her in silence until she'd collected herself. Or when she'd asked him about the scar on his ribs, she'd noticed when he'd walked past her room in shirt sleeves. And he'd actually told her, a sword wound from the Battle of Greymoor. where he'd held a bridge for 3 hours against impossible odds while his men retreated. They were learning each other. Against their will, against their better judgment, they were becoming something more than strangers bound by contract. And that terrified Elara more than any ball ever could. The night of the ball arrived with cruel irony, beautiful weather, clear skies, a full moon that turned the manor into something from a fairy tale. Elara stood in her dressing room while Anne and Molly worked on her appearance with the intensity of artists creating a masterpiece. The gown Lady Cordelia had commissioned was midnight blue silk that seemed to capture starlight, cut to emphasize Elara's figure without being scandalous. Her dark hair was swept up in an intricate style that took 2 hours to perfect. Diamond earrings, the Duke's mother's, glittered at her ears. "You look like a queen," Molly whispered. "I look like I'm wearing a costume," Elara said, staring at her reflection. The woman in the mirror was elegant, poised, perfect, a stranger. "You look like the Duchess of Ashford," Anne corrected gently. "Now you just have to believe it." A knock at the door. Lady Cordelia entered without waiting for permission, her own gown a statement in burgundy silk and rubies. "Stand," she commanded. Elara stood, turned slowly while Lady Cordelia inspected every detail. "You'll do," Lady Cordelia said finally. "Remember everything I taught you. Enter on the Duke's arm. Smile but don't grin. Speak when spoken to but don't volunteer information. Dance with him first, then only with men he approves. And for heaven's sake, don't drink more than 2 glasses of champagne. You need your wits about you." "Yes, Your Grace." "And Elara?" Lady Cordelia's voice softened slightly. "They're going to try to break you tonight. The whispers, the stares, the carefully placed insults. Don't let them see it land. A duchess doesn't flinch. I've survived worse than whispers. Have you? Because in my experience, kindness after cruelty is harder to bear than cruelty after kindness. You've been invisible your whole life. Tonight, everyone will be watching. That's its own kind of torture." Before Elara could respond, Lady Cordelia swept out. The ballroom was on the ground floor, a massive space with crystal chandeliers, marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. By the time Elara descended the stairs, it was already filled with people, hundreds of them. The kingdom's elite in their finest clothes, jewels glittering, voices rising in a cacophony of sophisticated conversation. They all turned to look as she appeared. The weight of their attention was physical, crushing. Elara fought the instinct to run back upstairs, to hide, to disappear. Then the Duke was there. He stood at the base of the stairs in full formal attire, looking like something carved from marble and moonlight. When their eyes met, something passed between them. Understanding, solidarity. He offered his arm. She took it. "Ready?" he murmured. "No." "Good. Neither am I." They entered the ballroom together. A hush fell, then broke into murmurs that spread like wildfire. "That's her?" "Younger than I expected. Pretty, I suppose, but that dress can't hide common blood." "I heard she was a servant in her own family's house." Poor Caspian, trapped by his father's foolish contract. Elara kept her spine straight, her expression serene, her hand steady on the Duke's arm. She'd survived 23 years of cruelty. She could survive this. The orchestra began playing a waltz. "Shall we?" the Duke asked. They moved to the center of the floor, his hand settled at her waist, hers on his shoulder. They'd practiced this, Mr. Wesley had drilled them until the movements were muscle memory. But this was different. This was real. Every eye in the room watching their first dance as husband and wife. "Look at me," the Duke said quietly. "Ignore them. Just focus on me." Elara met his dark eyes, saw the same tension she felt reflected there. The music swelled. They began to dance, and for a moment, everything else fell away. The watching crowd, the whispered judgments, the crushing weight of expectation. It was just the two of them, moving together in perfect synchronization, his hand firm and steady at her waist, guiding her through turns with effortless grace. "You're doing well," he murmured. "I'm terrified." "So am I." "You don't show it." "Neither do you." The dance ended. Polite applause rippled through the crowd. The Duke led her off the floor toward where Lady Cordelia held court with a cluster of older noblewomen. Ah, there you are, Lady Cordelia said. Ladies, allow me to present my nephew's wife, the Duchess of Ashford. Elara, this is the Countess of Merrick, Lady Blackthorne, and Duchess Ravencroft. The Countess of Merrick was exactly what Elara had imagined, beautiful in a cold, preserved way, with sharp eyes that assessed and dismissed in the same glance. Her daughter stood beside her, a willowy blonde who looked at the Duke with barely concealed longing. How delightful to finally meet you, the Countess said, her smile not reaching her eyes. We've heard so much about you. Though details have been scarce, there isn't much to tell, Elara said carefully. Oh, but there must be. After all, it's such a romantic story. Childhood betrothal, separated by circumstance, reunited by fate. The Countess's tone made romance sound like disease. Though I understand your father was a merchant, how interesting. The word dripped with condescension. My father was a merchant, yes, Elara said evenly. And your mother, also in trade? My mother died when I was young. How tragic. And you were raised by, The trap was obvious. If Elara admitted she'd been raised by servants, she'd be humiliated. If she lied, she'd be exposed. I was raised in my father's household, Elara said, which was technically true. Of course. And your education? Where did you study? At home. How quaint. So you've never attended finishing school, never been presented at court, never actually moved in society until… The Countess gestured vaguely. Now. Lady Blackthorne leaned in, voice dripping false sympathy. You must be so overwhelmed, poor dear. All of this must seem so foreign to you. I'm adapting, Elara said. Adapting, the Countess repeated, as if the word itself was evidence of inadequacy. Yes, I suppose that's all one can do when thrust into a position so far above one's natural station. The Duke's hand tightened on Elara's arm. A warning. He was about to intervene, but Elara spoke first. Natural station is an interesting concept, Countess. I've always wondered what determines it. Birth? Education? Behavior? She smiled politely. Because if it's behavior, I'd argue that grace and kindness matter more than pedigree. Wouldn't you agree? The Countess's eyes narrowed. I would argue that breeding shows in every gesture, every word, every choice. Some things simply cannot be taught. Then it's fortunate, Elara said, that the Duke values intelligence and character over inherited titles. He's remarkably progressive that way. A direct hit. The Countess's daughter had been rejected by the Duke precisely because she was vapid and spoiled despite her impeccable bloodline. The Countess's smile turned venomous. How refreshing to hear you speak so confidently about what the Duke values. You've known him for what, a month? I've known Caspian since he was a boy. His family and mine have been close for generations, but perhaps you understand him better in weeks than those of us who've known him for decades. I understand, Elara said quietly, that he deserves respect and privacy, not to be discussed like a prize at auction. Respect, the Countess said. From a girl who was purchased via contract, how deliciously ironic. The surrounding conversation stopped. Everyone within earshot turned to watch. Elara felt the Duke tense beside her, saw Lady Cordelia's warning glance. This was the moment, the public humiliation Mrs. Holloway had predicted, the test everyone had been waiting for. She could retreat, apologize, make herself small, or she could fight. You're right, Elara said clearly, her voice carrying across the sudden silence. I was purchased. My father sold me like property to clear a debt. It's not romantic. It's not a fairy tale. It's a business transaction between two men who saw me as a means to an end. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The Countess looked triumphant. But here's what you don't understand, Elara continued. I've spent my entire life being treated as worthless. By my father. By my stepmother. By people who thought birth and blood made them better than me. And you know what I learned? She looked directly at the Countess. That cruelty says nothing about the victim and everything about the perpetrator. How dare you? The Countess started. I'm not finished. Elara's voice was steady, calm, and absolutely unyielding. You want to humiliate me? Fine. Yes, I'm common. Yes, I was raised in poverty. Yes, I have no formal education or social connections. But I'm also the Duchess of Ashford now, and I will not apologize for surviving. I will not apologize for existing, and I certainly won't apologize to you. The ballroom was dead silent. The Duke stepped forward, his voice carrying like a blade. Anyone who questions my wife's worthiness questions my judgment. I chose to honor the contract. I chose to marry her. And I will not tolerate disrespect toward the Duchess. Am I clear, Countess? The Countess had gone pale. Your Grace, I meant no offense. Then you should choose your words more carefully in the future. He turned to the room at large. All of you. My wife is under my protection. Insult her, and you insult me. He offered Elara his arm. Shall we continue? Elara took it, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone could hear it. They walked through the crowd, which parted like water around them. Whispers erupted in their wake. Shocked, scandalized, uncertain. The Duke led her to a quiet alcove off the main ballroom. That was incredibly stupid, he said. I know. You just declared war on one of the most powerful families in the kingdom. I know. And you did it in front of everyone who matters. I know! Elara's composure finally cracked. I'm sorry, I couldn't let her. Don't apologize. The Duke's voice was rough. You were magnificent. Elara stared at him. What? I've watched people grovel before the Countess for years, seen her destroy reputations with a smile. And you just stood there and told her exactly what she is, a cruel woman hiding behind inherited status. Something that might have been pride flashed in his eyes. You have more courage than half the men I commanded in battle. I wasn't courageous, I was angry. Courage is acting despite fear. You were terrified and you still stood your ground. That's the definition of brave. Elara leaned against the wall, shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. What happens now? Now? The Duke's expression hardened. Now the Countess retaliates. She won't let this stand. She'll find a way to strike back, and it will be worse than public insults. I can handle it. Can you? Because she's vicious and connected, and she'll use every resource at her disposal to destroy you. Then I'll just have to be stronger than her. The Duke looked at her for a long moment. You really believe that? I have to. What's the alternative? Hide? Run? I'm tired of making myself small to make other people comfortable. Before he could respond, Lady Cordelia appeared in the alcove. There you are, she said. We have a problem. The Countess? The Duke asked. Worse. Your stepmother. Elara's blood went cold. Marguerite is here? She just arrived, with your half-brother and half-sister, and she's spreading a rather interesting story about your background. What story? Lady Cordelia's expression was grim. That you forged the marriage contract, that you seduced the Duke into believing it was real when it was actually a fraud created to trap him into marriage. She's claiming she has proof. The room tilted. That's insane. The contract was verified by lawyers. She has a document expert with her, someone claiming the seal is a forgery. Lady Cordelia looked at the Duke. She's demanding the marriage be annulled and Elara charged with fraud. Let her demand, the Duke said coldly. The contract is legitimate. I verified it myself. Can you prove it? Right now? In front of everyone? Lady Cordelia shook her head. Because that's what she's asking for, a public examination of the contract's authenticity. If you refuse, people will assume you have something to hide. If you agree and there's even the slightest doubt. She didn't finish the sentence. Elara felt the trap closing. This was the retaliation, not from the Countess, but from Marguerite. The woman who'd taken everything from her was now trying to take the last thing she had left, her name, her position, her marriage. Where is she? Elara asked. Don't, the Duke said sharply. This is a trap. She wants you to confront her publicly, wants to humiliate you. I'm already humiliated, Elara interrupted. Everyone in that ballroom heard what the Countess said. They know I'm nobody. But if Marguerite destroys the contract, I don't just lose the marriage, I lose you. She looked at him, saw understanding dawn. And despite everything, despite this being a transaction and an arrangement and nothing either of us chose, I don't want to lose you. The admission hung in the air between them. The Duke's expression softened. Elara, where is she? Elara asked Lady Cordelia. The main ballroom. She's holding court like a queen, showing people her so-called evidence. Elara straightened her shoulders, smoothed her dress, became the duchess she'd been pretending to be. Then let's go settle this. The crowd parted as Elara walked back into the ballroom, the Duke at her side, Lady Cordelia flanking them like a general preparing for war. Marguerite stood near the orchestra platform, resplendent in emerald silk, holding court with a circle of fascinated nobles. Richard and Isabel flanked her, both looking smug, and beside Marguerite stood a thin man with spectacles, the supposed document expert. "Ah, there she is," Marguerite said sweetly as Elara approached. "The little fraud herself." "Marguerite," Elara said calmly. "How unexpected." "Is it? After all, when one's stepdaughter commits criminal fraud, one has a duty to expose it." Marguerite smiled at the watching crowd. "I know you all must be shocked, but I assure you I have proof that the marriage contract the Duke claims is legitimate is actually a forgery created by this desperate girl to trap him." "Strong accusations," the Duke said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Supported by evidence," Marguerite countered. She gestured to the thin man. "This is Mr. Pemberton, one of the kingdom's foremost document experts. He's examined the contract and found irregularities." Mr. Pemberton stepped forward nervously. "The seal appears authentic, Your Grace, but the signature shows signs of—" "Of what?" the Duke interrupted. "Be specific." "The ink composition is inconsistent with documents from that period, and the handwriting, while similar to the late Mr. Vance's signature, has subtle differences that suggest forgery," Marguerite finished triumphantly. "This girl created a fake contract, probably with help from corrupt lawyers, to force marriage with the Duke. It's fraud, criminal fraud." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Elara stood frozen, mind racing. The contract was real. She knew it was real. The Duke's lawyers had verified it. The seal had been authenticated. Everything had been legitimate. Unless a memory surfaced. Her father's study, years ago. She'd been 12, cleaning while he worked. He'd been signing documents, grumbling about duplicate contracts for safety. "Always keep originals locked away," he'd muttered. "Never know when you'll need proof." "Where's the contract?" Elara asked suddenly. "I beg your pardon?" Marguerite said. "The contract you had examined. Where is it?" "In Mr. In Pemberton's possession, obviously." "Show me." Marguerite's smile faltered slightly. "This is hardly—" "Show me the contract," Elara repeated, her voice cutting through the crowd's murmurs. "If it's a forgery, I want to see it." Mr. Pemberton pulled a document from his case, unfolded it, held it up. Elara stepped closer, studied it in the ballroom's bright light, and saw it. A tiny imperfection in the seal, a slight difference in the paper weight. Details so small only someone who'd spent years examining her father's documents while cleaning his study would notice. "This isn't the original," she said. "Excuse me?" the Duke said sharply. "This is a copy. A very good copy, but a copy nonetheless." Elara looked at Marguerite. "My father made duplicate contracts for all major agreements. He kept originals in a locked safe in his study. This is from his working files, copies he used for reference." "That's absurd," Richard said. "We brought the contract we found. You brought a copy," Elara said. "Probably one you altered slightly to create the irregularities Mr. Pemberton found." "Where's the original?" Marguerite's expression turned venomous. "You're grasping at straws." "Am I?" Elara turned to the Duke. "Your lawyers verified the contract. Which version did they see?" "The original," the Duke said slowly. "From my father's records, sealed and signed, kept in the Duchy archives." "Then that's the one that matters," Elara said. She faced Marguerite again. "You found a copy in my father's papers. You altered it to create doubt, and you brought it here to destroy me publicly. But the real contract, the one that was verified by 3 independent legal authorities, is locked in the Duchy archives." "Prove it!" Marguerite hissed. "Gladly." The Duke's voice was ice. "Colonel Thorne?" The colonel appeared from the crowd. Your Grace? Retrieve the original marriage contract from the archives. Bring it here. Now. Yes, Your Grace. The colonel left at a run. The ballroom waited in tense silence. 15 agonizing minutes during which Marguerite's confidence visibly crumbled and Elara fought to keep breathing. Then Colonel Thorne returned, carrying a locked box. He opened it, withdrew a document, handed it to the Duke. The Duke unfolded it, held it up beside the one Marguerite had brought. The differences were immediately apparent. The original's seal was darker, deeper, the paper heavier, the signatures bolder. The copy beside it looked exactly like what it was, a forgery designed to deceive. Mr. Pemberton, the Duke said coldly, examine this. Tell everyone which is authentic. The document expert took both contracts with shaking hands, studied them. His face went white. The one from the Duchy archives is genuine, he whispered. The other is someone altered the copy, added chemicals to age it, modified the signature slightly. He looked at Marguerite with horror. You told me this was the original. I don't know what Marguerite started. You lied to me, Mr. Pemberton said, voice rising. You brought me a forgery and told me it was real. You made me complicit in fraud. How dare you? Marguerite's mask finally cracked. That little bitch doesn't deserve enough. The Duke's voice cut through the room like a whip. You attempted to sabotage my marriage with false accusations and forged evidence, in front of witnesses. That's slander, fraud, and a direct insult to the duchy. It's also criminal, Lady Cordelia added. Falsifying legal documents is a serious offense. Marguerite looked around wildly, saw no allies, only shocked faces and condemnation. She was a servant, Marguerite said desperately. A nothing. She doesn't deserve to be a duchess. She is the duchess, the Duke said flatly. And you are no longer welcome in this house, on duchy lands or in my presence. You have 1 hour to leave before I have you arrested for fraud. You can't. 1 hour, he repeated. Colonel, escort Mrs. Vance and her children from the premises. If they resist, call the guards. Colonel Thorne gestured. 2 guards appeared. Marguerite drew herself up, venom in her eyes as she looked at Elara. This isn't over. You may have won tonight, but you're still nothing. You'll always be nothing. Maybe, Elara said quietly, but I'm a nothing who won, and you're a something who lost. The guards escorted Marguerite, Richard, and Isabel from the ballroom. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Then someone began to clap. Lady Cordelia, slow, deliberate applause. Others joined, tentative at first, then stronger. Within moments, the entire ballroom was applauding, not for Marguerite's defeat, but for Elara's survival. The Duke took her hand, raised it slightly, a gesture of solidarity, of respect. My wife, he said clearly, has proven herself tonight. I suggest everyone remember that. The applause grew louder. Elara stood there, hand in her husband's, surrounded by people who'd come to watch her fail and were now applauding her survival. She felt dizzy, overwhelmed, terrified, but also, for the first time in her life, victorious. Later, much later, after the guests had left and the manor had quieted, Elara stood alone on the balcony outside the Rose Suite, still in her ball gown, trying to process everything that had happened. The door opened behind her. The Duke stepped out, jacket discarded, collar loosened. He looked exhausted. You should be celebrating, he said. Should I? You won, against the Countess, against your stepmother. You survived. I survived, Elara repeated. But what did I win? A room full of people who still think I'm unworthy? A position I claim by standing my ground instead of earning through birth? What exactly am I celebrating? The Duke was quiet for a moment. Then, you're celebrating being seen. For the first time in your life, people saw you. Not as a servant, not as an inconvenience, as someone who matters. Because you defended me. Because you defended yourself first. He moved to stand beside her at the railing. I've been thinking about what you said, about not wanting to lose this, lose us. Elara's breath caught. I was emotional. I shouldn't have. I don't want to lose it either. She turned to look at him, saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Vulnerability, hope, fear. This was supposed to be a transaction, he continued, a practical solution to mutual problems. But somewhere in the past few weeks, you became more than that. You became... He stopped, searching for words. Someone I trust. Someone I respect. Someone I look forward to seeing at dinner, in the library, in the quiet moments when we're just existing together. Caspian, I'm broken, he said. I told you that. I don't know how to love, how to be gentle, how to be anything except controlled and distant. But with you, I want to try. I want to learn. Elara felt tears threatening. I'm broken too, probably more than you. I've spent so long being invisible that I don't know how to be seen without feeling like I'm about to shatter. Then we'll shatter together. He took her hand. No more pretending this is just business. No more separate chambers and careful distance. Let's try being real with each other. I don't know how. Neither do I. We'll figure it out. He pulled her closer. She went, feeling the warmth of him through the silk of her dress, the solid reality of his presence. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. He tilted her chin up, looked into her eyes, and slowly, carefully, gave her time to pull away. He kissed her. Not like at their wedding, brief and formal. This was different, deeper, real. Elara kissed him back, pouring everything she couldn't say into the contact. All her fear and hope and desperate need to believe that maybe, just maybe, two broken people could build something whole. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Stay with me tonight, he said quietly. Not because the contract demands it, because I want you to. Elara nodded. Yes. They went inside together, closing the balcony doors against the night. And for the first time since becoming the Duchess, Elara didn't feel like she was playing a role. She felt like she was home. But in the shadows beyond the gardens, watching the Duke's bedroom window, a figure stood motionless. Lady Helena Ashford, the Duke's former fiancée, the woman who'd broken their engagement 3 years ago, smiled coldly in the darkness. She'd arrived too late for the ball. But she'd heard everything she needed to hear. The Duke had moved on, found someone new, someone he was beginning to care about, which meant it was time to remind him exactly what he'd lost, and take back what was rightfully hers. Helena Ashford arrived 3 days later. Elara was in the library when Mrs. Holloway appeared in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral in the way that meant trouble. Your Grace, Lady Helena Ashford requests an audience. Elara's hand stilled on the book she'd been reading. She'd heard the name whispered by servants, seen the carefully blank expressions on staff faces when it was mentioned. The Duke's former fiancée, the woman who'd held his heart before the war, before the scars, before everything had broken. Does the Duke know she's here? Elara asked. He's at the capital for duchy business. He won't return until tomorrow. Of course. Helena had timed this perfectly. Where is she? The Rose drawing room. Elara closed her book, stood, smoothed her dress, a simple morning gown of dove gray that suddenly felt inadequate. I'll see her. Mrs. Holloway's expression flickered, almost like warning. Your Grace, perhaps you should wait for the Duke. I'm the Duchess of this house, Elara said quietly. I don't need permission to receive guests. She walked to the Rose drawing room with her spine straight and her hands steady, even though her heart was hammering. The past 3 days since the ball had been different, waking in Caspian's arms, sharing breakfast, existing together without the careful distance that had defined their marriage. She'd started to believe maybe they could build something real. Now a ghost from his past had materialized to test that belief. Helena sat by the window, backlit by morning sun that turned her auburn hair to fire. She was beautiful in the effortless way aristocrats often were, tall, elegant, dressed in traveling clothes that probably cost more than Elara's entire wardrobe. When she stood, her movements were liquid grace. Duchess, Helena said, offering a perfect curtsy. How kind of you to see me. Lady Helena. Elara matched the curtsy, grateful for Lady Margrave's endless drilling. This is unexpected. I'm sure it is. I've been traveling abroad for the past 3 years, only just returned to discover Caspian had married. Helena's smile was warm, but her blue eyes were calculating. I had to meet the woman who finally captured him. I didn't capture anyone. We have a contract. Yes, I heard about that. How practical. Helena settled back into her chair, gestured for Elara to sit. In the drawing room of Elara's own house, this woman was acting like hostess. Elara sat anyway, keeping her expression calm. I also heard about the drama at your ball, Helena continued. Your stepmother's accusations, the forged documents. How absolutely dreadful for you. It was handled. By Caspian, yes. He always was protective of things he considered his. Helena tilted her head, studying Elara like an interesting specimen. Tell me, do you love him? The directness was jarring. That's rather personal. Is it? You're married to the man I was engaged to for 2 years. I think I'm entitled to some curiosity. Helena's smile sharpened. Unless it's too painful to discuss, I imagine loving someone who settled for you out of contractual obligation must be difficult. The barb landed precisely where intended. Elara felt it pierce the fragile hope she'd been nurturing. Why are you here? Elara asked. To see old friends, to visit my family estate nearby, and yes, to see Caspian. Helena's expression softened into something that looked genuine. We were very close once. I hurt him badly when I ended our engagement. I'd like to make amends. Why did you end it? He didn't tell you? Helena laughed softly. No, of course he wouldn't. Caspian keeps his wounds private. She leaned forward conspiratorially. He came back from the war changed, scarred, distant, haunted by whatever he'd seen and done. I tried to love him through it, truly I did. But he pushed me away, built walls, refused to let me in. Eventually I realized I was trying to love a man who no longer existed. So you left? I left, Helena confirmed, and it destroyed him. I don't think he's ever forgiven me for that, or himself for failing to be the man I needed. Elara absorbed this, trying to reconcile the story with the man she was beginning to know, the man who sat with her in libraries, who defended her in ballrooms, who was learning to be vulnerable again. That was 3 years ago, Elara said. He's different now. Is he? Or is he just better at hiding the damage? Helena's expression turned pitying. I know Caspian intimately. I know his scars, the visible ones, and the ones buried deep. I know what makes him retreat, what makes him feel. And I know that he married you because it was safe, a transaction with no emotional risk. You don't know anything about our marriage. Don't I? Helena stood, walked to the window. I know he keeps you in separate chambers most nights. I know he spends half his time in the capital avoiding being here. I know he's kind to you because kindness costs him nothing. But love? Real love? She turned, eyes sad. That terrifies him, and it always will. Elara's chest tightened, because Helena was right about some of it. The separate chambers had only changed 3 nights ago. Caspian did spend excessive time away, and he had admitted he didn't know how to love. I'm not here to hurt you, Helena said gently. Truly, I'm here because I made a mistake 3 years ago. I gave up on someone I loved because he made it hard, but I've grown since then. I'm stronger now, and I think maybe I could be what he needs, someone who knows all his broken places and loves him anyway. He's married to me. Marriages can be dissolved, especially ones built on contracts rather than choice. Helena moved closer, voice soft with false sympathy. I know this must be painful to hear, but wouldn't you rather set him free to be with someone he actually chose, someone from his world who understands his needs? Get out, Helena blinked. Excuse me? Get out of my house. Elara stood, fury burning through the fear. You show up here while my husband is away, tell me I'm inadequate, suggest I should dissolve our marriage for his benefit, and expect me to just accept it? No. I'm trying to help. You're trying to manipulate me into stepping aside so you can reclaim something you threw away. Elara's voice was steel. But here's what you don't understand about me. I've spent my entire life being told I wasn't good enough, wasn't worthy, should disappear for everyone else's convenience. I'm done with that. If Caspian wants to end our marriage, he can tell me himself, but I won't be bullied into leaving by someone who doesn't even have the courage to wait for him to come home. Helena's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Elara walked to the door, opened it. Mrs. Holloway will show you out. Helena gathered her things with careful dignity. At the door she paused. This isn't over. Yes, Elara said quietly. It is. She watched Helena leave, then closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. Mrs. Holloway appeared in the hallway. Your Grace? Is there somewhere I can go, somewhere away from the house? Mrs. Holloway studied her for a moment. Then, surprising Elara completely, she smiled. The old chapel, quarter-mile east through the gardens. No one uses it anymore. It's quiet. Thank you. The chapel was stone and ivy, abandoned but beautiful. Elara sat on a wooden bench inside, letting the silence wrap around her while she tried to sort through the tangle of emotions Helena had stirred up. Was she right? Was Elara just a convenient solution to Caspian's problems? A safe choice that required no emotional risk? The past 3 nights suggested otherwise. The way he'd held her, talked to her, let down his guard. That hadn't felt like safety or convenience. It had felt real. But Helena had known him for years. What if she understood him better than Elara ever could? Thought I'd find you here. Elara looked up. Lady Cordelia stood in the chapel doorway, picking her way carefully over the uneven floor. Mrs. Holloway told me what happened, Lady Cordelia said, settling onto the bench beside Elara. Helena always had terrible timing. You know her? I know of her. Beautiful, charming, completely self-absorbed. She left my nephew when he needed her most, then spent 3 years living very well on her family's money in foreign capitals. Lady Cordelia snorted. Now she's back because she heard he married and can't stand that he moved on. She said she wants to make amends. She wants to reclaim her territory. There's a difference. Lady Cordelia looked at Elara shrewdly. What did she tell you? That Caspian married me because it was safe, that he'll never really love me, that I should step aside for his sake. And you believe her? I don't know what to believe. Lady Cordelia was quiet for a moment. Then, my nephew has been alone since he was 23. His mother died, his father had died years before. Helena abandoned him. He built walls so high nobody could reach him because letting people in meant they could hurt him. And for 10 years he survived that way, functional but empty. I know all this. Do you? Because here's what Helena doesn't know, what nobody knows except me and Mrs. Holloway. Caspian talks about you. Lady Cordelia smiled at Elara's surprise. He tells me about conversations you have, books you discuss, your insights on duchy business. He laughs more when you're around. He comes home earlier from the capital. You've cracked those walls in ways Helena never did, because you're not trying to change him. You're just existing beside him, being honest and real and undemanding. Elara felt tears threaten. What if it's not enough? What if it's exactly enough? Lady Cordelia took Elara's hand. Helena offered him grand passion and dramatic love. It was exhausting. You offer him peace, partnership, someone who sees his scars and doesn't flinch. Don't underestimate how valuable that is. She said marriages can be dissolved. They can, but they require both parties to agree. Does Caspian seem like he wants to end this? Elara thought about the past 3 nights, the way he'd held her, the vulnerability in his voice when he'd asked her to try being real with each other. No, she said quietly. Then trust that. Trust him. Lady Cordelia stood. And the next time Helena tries to manipulate you into leaving, remember that you belong here. You earned this. You survived that ball, faced down your stepmother, stood your ground against the Countess. You're the Duchess of Ashford. Start acting like it. The next day, Caspian returned from the capital. Elara met him in the entrance hall, watching as he dismounted and handed his horse to a groom. He looked tired, dusty from travel, but his expression lightened when he saw her. I missed you, he said simply. The words settled something inside her. Helena's poison lost its potency in the face of his genuine warmth. I missed you too, she said. But we need to talk. His expression shuddered slightly. That sounds ominous. Helena was here. Everything about him went rigid. When? Yesterday, while you were gone. What did she want? To see you, to meet me, to suggest I'm inadequate and should step aside. Elara kept her voice even. She said she wants to make amends. Caspian's jaw clenched. She has no right to be here. She has every right. She's a noblewoman visiting the area. I can't ban her from duchy lands because she's your ex-fiancée. You could if I asked you to. Could I? Or would that make me look threatened and insecure? Elara moved closer. I need to know something. Did you love her? He was silent for a long moment. Yes. The honesty hurt, but Elara preferred it to lies. Do you still? No. His voice was firm. What I felt for Helena died when she walked away. What's left is memory, and a regret that I wasn't strong enough to be what she needed. She thinks she's strong enough now. She wants another chance. I don't. Are you sure? Because she knows you in ways I never will. She was there before the war, before the scars. Stop. He closed the distance between them, took her face in his hands. Helena knew the man I was. You know the man I am, and I would choose you over her 1,000 times. Why? Because she wanted me to be someone I couldn't be anymore. You accept who I actually am. His thumbs brushed her cheeks, because she made everything complicated and exhausting. You make things simple, real. She's beautiful and sophisticated. You're brilliant and brave, and you make me want to be better instead of making me feel broken for being myself. He kissed her forehead. If she comes back, you tell me immediately. I'll handle it. I can handle it myself. I know you can. You've proven that repeatedly. But you don't have to fight every battle alone anymore. That's what marriage means. Let me stand beside you. Elara leaned into him, letting herself be held. I threw her out of the house. She felt him smile against her hair. Did you? She was trying to manipulate me. I don't respond well to manipulation. No, you don't. He pulled back to look at her. What else did she say? That you keep me in separate chambers and avoid being home. That our marriage is a transaction without real feeling. Is that what you think? I did, for a while. Elara met his eyes. But then you kissed me on the balcony, and the past 3 nights you've held me like I matter. So I don't know what to think anymore. Think this. I married you because of a contract. I'm staying married to you because I want to. His voice was rough with emotion. I don't know how to do this perfectly. I'm going to mess up, retreat when I should stay, close off when I should open. But I'm trying. For you. With you. I'm trying too, Elara whispered, even though I'm terrified. Of what? That I'll wake up one day and this will all be gone. That you'll realize I'm not enough. That Helena was right about everything. Caspian kissed her then, fierce and claiming and completely genuine. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with intensity. You're more than enough, he said. You're everything I didn't know I needed. Helena returned a week later. This time, Caspian was home. Elara was in the gardens when a servant found her. Your Grace, Lady Helena is here. She's in the Duke's study. Elara's stomach dropped. He's meeting with her? She arrived unannounced. Insisted she needed to speak with him urgently. Elara walked toward the house, mind racing. This was the test. How Caspian handled Helena would tell her everything she needed to know about where she stood. She entered through the side door, moved quietly through the corridors toward the study. The door was ajar. Voices drifted out. Missed you, Cass. You can't imagine how much. Helena's voice, soft and intimate. Don't call me that. Caspian's voice was cold. You lost that privilege. Did I? We were engaged for 2 years. That means something. It meant something. Past tense. Because I made a mistake? Because I was young and scared and couldn't handle what the war did to you? Helena's voice broke convincingly. I've regretted it every day. Let me make it right. Elara pressed closer to the door, heart pounding. There's nothing to make right, Caspian said. I'm married. To a girl you barely know. A contract marriage you were forced into. I wasn't forced. I chose to honor it. But do you love her? Helena pressed. The way you loved me? Silence. Elara held her breath. No, Caspian said finally. The words stabbed through Elara's chest. I don't love her the way I loved you, he continued, because what I felt for you was desperate and consuming and ultimately destructive. What I feel for Elara is different, steadier, real. Real? Helena laughed. She's a commoner who trapped you with a contract. She's the Duchess who defended herself against society's worst and won. She's brave and honest, and she doesn't play games. His voice hardened. Unlike you. Caspian, you came here hoping I'd fall back into old patterns, that I'd see you and remember what we had and want it again. But I don't. What we had was passion without foundation. It burned bright and died fast. And what do you have with her? A partnership, respect, trust, a pause. The beginning of love, if we're both brave enough. Elara's breath caught. You're making a mistake, Helena said. She'll never be what I was. You're right. She'll never be what you were. She'll be better. The finality in Caspian's voice was absolute. This conversation is over. Don't come back to this house. Don't contact me again. We're done, Helena. We've been done for 3 years. You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is wasting 2 years trying to love someone who couldn't love me back. Footsteps approached the door. Elara moved quickly, ducking into a side corridor just as Helena stormed out, tears streaming down her perfect face in fury rather than sadness. Caspian appeared in the doorway, saw Elara immediately. How much did you hear? He asked quietly. Enough. He stepped into the corridor, pulled her close. I meant every word. I know. Elara pressed her face against his chest. But she was right about one thing. I'll never be what she was to you. Thank heaven for that. He tilted her chin up. I don't want what she was. I want what you are. And what's that? Mine, he said simply. My partner, my Duchess, my wife. The beginning of love, Elara repeated his words back to him. Did you mean that? I'm terrified of it. But yes. His smile was tentative. Is that acceptable? Elara laughed despite the tears threatening. It's more than acceptable. It's perfect. He kissed her then, in the corridor of their home, with sunlight streaming through the windows and servants discreetly looking away. A kiss that tasted like hope and promise and the fragile beginning of something real. When they finally broke apart, Caspian kept his arms around her. I need to tell you something, he said. About the contract. Elara stiffened. What about it? I had my lawyers review it thoroughly after your stepmother's accusation. They found a clause I'd missed. He took a breath. After 1 year of marriage, either party can dissolve the contract without penalty. The debt is forgiven, the marriage can be annulled. Both parties walk away free. The words hung between them. When is our anniversary? Elara asked quietly. 6 months from now. 6 months until she could be free. Until the choice that had been made for them became one they could make for themselves. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I don't want you to feel trapped. In 6 months, you can leave if you want. No judgment, no consequences. You'll keep your dowry, your title of courtesy, everything I promised. His dark eyes were intense. But I'm also telling you that in 6 months, I'm going to ask you to stay. Not because of a contract, because you choose to. Elara's heart felt too big for her chest. And if I don't? Then I'll let you go. And I'll spend the rest of my life knowing I had something precious and couldn't keep it. She touched his scarred face, traced the line that cut through his eyebrow. You really mean that? I really mean that. Then I guess we both have 6 months to figure out if this is real. I already know it's real, Caspian said, but I'll wait until you do too. 3 weeks later, Elara made a decision that changed everything. She was reviewing household accounts with Mrs. Holloway when she found the entry, a regular payment to an orphanage in the capital. Substantial amounts paid quarterly for the past 7 years. What's this? She asked. Mrs. Holloway's expression softened. The Duke's charity. He sponsors the orphanage, pays for food, clothes, education, visits when he's in the capital. He never mentioned it. He wouldn't. He doesn't do it for recognition. Elara stared at the numbers, seeing her husband in a new light. Then an idea began to form. That evening at dinner, she broached the topic. I want to start a project. Caspian looked up from his meal. What kind of project? The east wing of the manor. It's mostly empty, isn't it? Yes, it hasn't been used in decades. Why? I want to convert it into a school for girls like me, common girls, poor girls, girls with no family or prospects. The words came faster as the vision clarified. We could teach them reading, writing, household management, skills that would let them support themselves. Give them the education I never had. Caspian set down his fork, studying her intently. That's ambitious. It's necessary. Do you know how many girls are trapped in situations like mine? Invisible, unwanted, with no path forward? Elara leaned forward. I have resources now, position. I could actually help them. Society won't like it. The nobility will think you're overstepping. Let them. I didn't survive the ball in your aunt and Helena just to stay quiet and decorative. A slow smile spread across Caspian's face. You really have stopped caring what they think. I care about what matters, and this matters. She met his eyes. Will you support it? I'll do more than support it. I'll fund it. He reached across the table, took her hand. You're going to be a remarkable duchess, not despite your background, because of it. The school opened 4 months later. 20 girls, ages 8 to 16, moved into the converted East Wing. Elara hired teachers, established curriculum, set rules that emphasized dignity and opportunity over charity and pity. The nobility was scandalized, of course. Letters poured in questioning the appropriateness, the expense, the message it sent. Lady Margrave resigned in protest. 3 prominent families refused social invitations. Elara didn't care, because when she walked through the East Wing and saw girls reading books, learning mathematics, practicing etiquette not to please others but to expand their own opportunities, she saw herself. What she could have been with just a little help. You're changing things, Lady Cordelia said one afternoon, watching the girls at their lessons. Not just for them, for everyone. Making the nobility question their assumptions. Good, Elara said. Assumptions need questioning. You've also made enemies. The Countess of Merrick is spreading rumors that you're training servants to infiltrate noble houses, that you have political ambitions. Do I? Do you? Elara smiled. Not political ones, but I want every girl who walks out of this school to know she's worth something. That birth doesn't determine value. If that threatens the Countess, she can stay threatened. Mrs. Holloway appeared in the doorway. Your Grace? A visitor. Who? Says her name is Clara, used to work at Thornhaven. Elara's breath caught. Clara, the only servant who'd shown her kindness. Clara stood in the entrance hall, thin and nervous, clutching a small bag. Your Grace, she said, curtsying awkwardly. I'm sorry to intrude. I didn't know where else to go. What happened? The Vance house collapsed. Mrs. Vance's debts finally caught up. They lost everything. Clara's voice shook. I was dismissed without wages. I've been trying to find work, but nobody will hire me without references. And Mrs. Vance refuses. You have a position here, Elara interrupted. If you want it. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Your Grace, I can't accept charity. It's not charity. I'm starting a school. I need staff who understand what these girls have survived, who won't look down on them. Elara took Clara's hands. You showed me kindness when nobody else did. Let me return the favor. Clara broke down completely. Elara held her, feeling the weight of how far she'd come, from the girl in the attic to the Duchess offering sanctuary to others. That evening, she told Caspian about Clara over dinner. You didn't hesitate, he observed. Should I have? Most people would have. They'd worry about appearances, about hiring someone from your past, about what society would say. I stopped worrying about what society says the night I told the Countess exactly what she was. Elara smiled. Besides, Clara deserves better than what life gave her, just like those girls in the East Wing, just like me. Caspian stood, circled the table, pulled her to her feet. Do you know what you are? What? Extraordinary. He kissed her softly. Brave and kind and absolutely extraordinary. I'm just doing what should be done. That's what makes you extraordinary. You see what's wrong and fix it. You don't wait for permission or approval. His arms tightened around her. I'm in awe of you. Elara looked up at this man who'd started as a stranger, become a companion, and was slowly transforming into something more, something that felt dangerously close to the love they'd both been afraid to name. "Our anniversary is in 2 months," she said quietly. "I know. Have you thought about what you'll ask me?" "Every day." His dark eyes were intense. "Have you thought about what you'll answer?" "Every day," she echoed. "And?" Elara smiled. "You'll find out in 2 months." He groaned. "You're going to make me wait?" "You said I had time to figure out if this was real. I'm taking it. It's real," he said firmly. "I love you, Elara. I'm terrified and uncertain, and I'll probably mess this up in 100 ways, but I love you." The words hung in the air between them, the first time either had said them. Elara's heart hammered. "You love me." "I love you, Sam," he repeated, "not because of a contract or convenience or political necessity, because you're you, fierce and honest and brave and kind, because you make me want to be better, because when I imagine the future, you're in every part of it." "Caspian, you don't have to say it back," he said quickly. "I'm not asking you to. I just needed you to know. Before our anniversary, before the choice becomes official, I needed you to know that if you stay, it's because I want you. Not because of any contract." Elara reached up, pulled him down into a kiss that said everything words couldn't. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "Ask me in 2 months," she whispered, "and you'll get your answer. Promise?" "Promise." He held her close in the dining room of their manor, in the house that had become home, surrounded by the life they were building together. Two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage and started building something whole. The girl who'd inherited nothing had claimed everything that mattered, and the man who'd had everything finally understood what he'd been missing. 2 months until the choice became official. But in her heart, Elara already knew what her answer would be. The 2 months passed like water through cupped hands, precious, fleeting, impossible to hold. Elara threw herself into the school with fierce dedication. The East Wing transformed from dusty abandonment into vibrant life. Mornings rang with recitation, afternoons with debate, evenings with laughter as 20 girls discovered what it meant to have hope. But beneath the routine, tension built. The anniversary approached like a storm on the horizon, inevitable, potentially devastating, impossible to ignore. Caspian felt it too. She saw it in the way he watched her across dinner tables, in libraries, in quiet moments when he thought she wasn't looking, like he was memorizing her, preparing for loss. "You're staring again," she said one evening in the library. "Can't help it." He set down his book. "You're beautiful when you're concentrating." "I'm reading household budgets. That's not beautiful, it's boring." "Everything about you is beautiful." He moved to sit beside her on the settee. "Even the boring parts." Elara leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of his presence. These quiet moments had become her favorite. No performance, no pretense, just existing together. "Nervous about the anniversary?" she asked. "Terrified." "Me too." He kissed the top of her head. "Whatever you decide, I'll understand." "Will you?" "I'll try to, even if it destroys me." The raw honesty made her chest ache. She turned to look at him. "You really think I might leave?" "I think you'd be smart to. I'm broken and difficult, and I'll probably hurt you without meaning to. You think very little of yourself." "I think realistically." His dark eyes were shadowed. "Helena was right about some things. I push people away. I retreat when I should stay. I'm better at being a duke than a husband." "Then it's good I don't need you to be perfect," Elara said. "I just need you to be honest." "I can do honest." He pulled her closer. "I honestly love you. I honestly can't imagine life without you, and I'm honestly terrified that you'll realize you can do better. Better than a war hero duke who funds orphanages and lets me turn his manor into a school? That's a high bar." He almost smiled. "You know what I mean." "I do, and you're wrong." She took his scarred hand in hers. "But you'll see that. In time." "How much time?" 2 weeks. She kissed him softly. "Ask me in 2 weeks and find out." The letter arrived 1 week before the anniversary. Elara was teaching geography to the younger girls when Clara appeared in the doorway, face pale. Your Grace? A messenger from the capital. He says it's urgent. Elara's stomach dropped. Nothing good ever came from urgent messages. The messenger waited in the entrance hall, travel-stained and nervous. He handed her a sealed envelope bearing the royal crest. What is this? Elara asked. Summons, Your Grace. The Queen requests your presence at court 3 days from now. Why? I wasn't told. Just ordered to deliver this and await your response. Elara broke the seal, scanned the formal language, a request that was really a command. The Queen wished to meet the Duchess of Ashford, who'd caused such unusual talk in society. 3 days. Formal audience. Tell Her Majesty I'll attend, Elara said, her voice steadier than she felt. After the messenger left, she found Caspian in his study. The Queen summoned me, she said without preamble. He looked up sharply. When? 3 days from now. Formal audience at court. Caspian's expression darkened. This is because of the school. Someone complained to Her Majesty about your inappropriate activities. Let them complain. I haven't done anything wrong. You've challenged the social order. That's enough. He stood, began pacing. The Queen is traditional, conservative. If she sides against you, then I'll defend myself, just like I did at the ball. This isn't the same. This is the Queen. If she rules against the school, we'll have to close it. If she questions your fitness as Duchess... He stopped, jaw tight. She could pressure me to dissolve the marriage. The words hung heavy between them. 1 week before our anniversary, Elara said quietly. Convenient timing. Very. Caspian's eyes narrowed. Someone orchestrated this. Someone who knows about the contract clause, knows the timing would maximize damage. Helena. Possibly. Or the Countess. Or both working together. He moved to her, took her hands. You don't have to do this. I can go to court. Explain to the Queen. No. Elara's voice was firm. If I hide behind you, I prove every critic right. I have to face this myself. Then I'm coming with you. Caspian, I'm coming with you, he repeated. Not to speak for you, but to stand beside you. That's not negotiable. She saw the fear beneath his determination. Not for himself, but for her. For what the Queen's judgment might mean. All right, she said. We go together. The royal palace made Ashford Manor look modest. Towering spires, marble, everything, gardens that stretched to the horizon. Elara stood in the entrance hall wearing her finest gown, deep emerald silk that Lady Cordelia had insisted she have made for exactly this type of occasion, and tried not to feel like an imposter. Breathe, Caspian murmured beside her. He was in full formal military dress, medals gleaming, every inch the decorated war hero. You belong here. Do I? You're the Duchess of Ashford. That alone gives you the right. Everything else you've earned. A royal attendant appeared. Their Majesties will see you now. The throne room was designed to intimidate. High vaulted ceiling, stained glass windows casting colored light across white marble floors. The twin thrones on a raised dais at the far end. Courtiers lined the walls, hundreds of them. The kingdom's elite assembled to witness whatever judgment was about to fall. The Queen sat on her throne, regal and severe in burgundy velvet. Beside her, the king looked bored and decorative. Both wore crowns that caught the light and commanded attention. Elara and Caspian walked the length of the throne room, every eye tracking their progress. At the base of the dais, they bowed and curtsied. Duke Ashford, the Queen said, her voice carrying effortlessly. And the new Duchess. How delightful to finally meet you. The honor is ours, Your Majesty, Caspian said formally. The Queen's eyes fixed on Elara, sharp, assessing, missing nothing. We've heard interesting things about you, Duchess. Tales of unusual origin, dramatic entrances, and even more dramatic projects. I hope the tales were accurate, Your Majesty. Were they? Let's see. Born to a merchant family, raised in poverty despite your father's wealth, married to the Duke via contractual obligation, started a school for common girls in your husband's manor. The Queen tilted her head. Have I missed anything? Several important details, Your Majesty, but the outline is correct. And this school, tell me about it. Elara felt the weight of attention from every courtier in the room. This was the trap. Whatever she said would be used against her. So she chose truth. The school teaches 20 girls aged 8 to 16, girls from situations similar to mine, orphaned, abandoned, or unwanted by their families. We teach reading, writing, mathematics, household management, and deportment. The goal is to give them skills that allow independence and dignity. Independence, the Queen repeated. An interesting goal, some might say dangerous. Why is independence dangerous, Your Majesty? A ripple of shock went through the courtiers. One didn't question the Queen, but the Queen's lips curved slightly. Because it disrupts the natural order. Girls of common birth learning to read and manage households. What's next? Voting? Owning property? With respect, Your Majesty, girls of common birth already manage households. They simply do it as servants, invisible and unvalued. All I'm doing is giving them education that makes their labor more skilled and therefore more valuable. To what end? So they don't have to survive the way I did. Elara's voice remained steady. So they have choices I never had. So they know their worth isn't determined by who their parents were or how much money they inherited. The Queen studied her for a long moment. You speak very boldly for someone in your position. My position as what, Your Majesty? As the wife of one of your most loyal dukes? As a woman trying to help vulnerable children? Or as someone born common who dared to rise above her station? All three. The Queen leaned forward. Do you understand what you're doing? You're challenging centuries of social structure, making nobility uncomfortable, suggesting that birth isn't destiny. I'm suggesting that cruelty shouldn't be destiny, Elara corrected, that a girl born to poverty shouldn't be condemned to suffering just because society decided her life has less value. And if I order you to close this school, if I declare it inappropriate for a duchess to engage in such activities? Elara felt Caspian tense beside her. This was the moment, the choice. She could bow, apologize, save her position and her marriage and everything she'd built with Caspian, or she could stand her ground, risk everything, be true to the person she'd become. Then I would respectfully decline, Your Majesty. The throne room went absolutely silent. The Queen's expression didn't change. You would defy a direct order from your Queen? I would fulfill my duty as Duchess to care for those under my protection. Those girls are under my protection now. I won't abandon them. Elara lifted her chin. If that costs me my title, my position, even my marriage, so be it, but I won't close that school. Caspian's hand found hers, squeezed. A silent message, I'm with you. The Queen stared at her for what felt like an eternity. Then she did something completely unexpected. She smiled. Duke Ashford, the Queen said, your wife is either the bravest woman in the kingdom or the most foolish. I haven't decided which. Both, Your Majesty, Caspian said, and that's why I love her. The Queen's smile widened. Love? How unfashionable. She stood, descended from the dais. The entire court held its breath. She stopped directly in front of Elara, eye to eye, Queen to Duchess. Do you know why I summoned you? The Queen asked quietly, for Elara's ears alone. To test me. To test whether you were a fortune hunter using scandal for attention or something more interesting. The Queen's eyes sparkled. I've been queen for 30 years. I've watched noble girls parade through this court, perfectly educated and completely useless. Not one of them would have risked anything to defend vulnerable children. Your Majesty, I was born common too, the Queen said, so softly only Elara could hear. Daughter of a minor lord's housekeeper. I married the king for political alliance, just like you married your duke. Everyone expected me to fail, to be crushed by the weight of expectations. She smiled. I proved them wrong, just like you're doing. Elara's breath caught. The Queen raised her voice, addressing the court. We find the Duchess of Ashford's school to be an admirable charitable endeavor, perfectly appropriate for a woman of her station. In fact, we encourage more noble families to follow her example. She turned back to Elara. You have our full support, Duchess. Use it wisely. The courtiers erupted in murmurs. The Queen returned to her throne, waved a dismissive hand. You're dismissed. Both of you, go home and continue making the nobility uncomfortable. It's good for them." Elara and Caspian bowed and curtsied again, then walked back down the throne room. Every step felt surreal. She'd expected condemnation and received endorsement, expected rejection and received validation. Outside in the palace gardens, Caspian pulled her behind a hedge and kissed her with fierce intensity. "You magnificent, terrifying woman," he said against her lips. "Do you know what you just did? Apparently made the queen like me? You changed everything. The queen's endorsement means the school is untouchable. Noble families will have to accept it. Some might even follow your example." He laughed, almost giddy. "You just transformed from scandal to trendsetter in one conversation. I just told the truth. Most people can't do that, especially not to the queen." He held her face in his hands. "I'm in awe of you, completely, utterly in awe." "Save the awe for tomorrow," Elara said. "We still have an anniversary to survive." The night before the anniversary, Elara couldn't sleep. She stood on the balcony outside the Rose Suite, their suite now, shared for the past months, watching stars wheel overhead. Tomorrow the contract clause activated. Tomorrow she could walk away free. Tomorrow she'd have to choose. "Can't sleep either?" Caspian's voice came from behind her. "Too much thinking." He joined her at the railing, wearing only shirt sleeves despite the cold. "Want to share?" "I'm thinking about the girl I was a year ago, invisible, unwanted, convinced I'd never matter to anyone." "You matter to everyone now." "Do I? Or do they just tolerate me because the queen approves and you defend me?" Caspian turned her to face him. "You matter because you're brilliant and brave and you make the world better just by existing in it. The queen saw it. I see it. Eventually, you'll see it too." "What if I can't?" Elara's voice broke. "What if I'm always that girl in the attic, waiting for someone to tell me I'm worth something?" "Then I'll tell you every day until you believe it." He pulled her close. "You're worth everything, Elara. Everything, and more." She held on to him, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his arms around her. "Ask me," she whispered. "It's not midnight yet." "Ask me anyway." Caspian pulled back enough to look at her. His dark eyes were vulnerable in the starlight. "Elara Ashford, Duchess in contract and in truth, wife I never deserved and somehow received. Will you stay? Not because you have to, not because of obligation or duty or anything except choice. Will you choose this? Choose us? Choose me?" The words she'd been holding back for months finally broke free. "I love you," she said. "I've loved you since you defended me at the ball, maybe even before that. Since you gave me the library, since you let me be angry and scared and imperfect, since you looked at me like I was worth seeing." Is that a yes? That's a yes to all of it. This marriage, this life, this future we're building. She touched his scarred face. "I choose you, Caspian. Every day, every moment, every breath. I choose you." He kissed her then, and it felt like a vow more binding than any contract. When they finally broke apart, both of them were crying. "I need to tell you something," Caspian said. "About the contract." "What about it?" "There never was a dissolution clause." Elara went still. "What?" "I lied. The contract was binding until death. There was no escape after a year." He looked stricken. "I told you that story because I wanted you to have a choice, to know you could leave if you wanted, to believe our marriage was something you chose, not something forced on you. You lied to me." "Yes." "For months, while I agonized over this decision, while I thought I had an escape, you lied." "Yes." He didn't make excuses. "I'm sorry. I wanted to give you power in a situation where you had none, even if it meant deceiving you." Elara should have been furious, should have felt betrayed. Instead, she laughed. "What?" Caspian looked baffled. "You lied to give me freedom. That's the most you thing I've ever heard." She shook her head, still laughing. "You're terrible at deception, you know. I figured it out 2 weeks ago." "You what?" "I asked Lady Cordelia to review the contract. She confirmed there was no dissolution clause." Elara smiled at his stunned expression. "I've been waiting to see when you'd confess." "You knew this whole time? I knew you were trying to give me a choice that didn't exist, trying to make me feel powerful. She took his hands. And it worked, not because the escape was real, but because you cared enough to try. You're not angry? I'm furious and touched and completely in love with you. She pulled him close. Don't lie to me again, even with good intentions. Never. I swear it. Good. She kissed him. Now take me to bed. We have an anniversary to celebrate properly. He swept her into his arms, carried her inside, and spent the night proving exactly how much she was loved. 6 months later, the school had expanded to 50 girls. Other noble families had started similar programs. The Queen had personally donated funds, and Elara had become something she'd never imagined, a voice for the voiceless, a champion of the forgotten. But the moment that mattered most came on a quiet afternoon when a carriage arrived unannounced. Elara was in the gardens with some of the older students, teaching them about medicinal herbs when Clara appeared. Your Grace, you have visitors. Who? They wouldn't give names, just said they were family. Elara's stomach clenched. She excused herself, walked to the entrance hall, and stopped dead. Marguerite stood there, but not the polished, venomous woman from a year ago. This Marguerite was thin, dressed in faded clothes with desperation in her eyes. Isabel and Richard flanked her, equally diminished. What are you doing here? Elara asked. We need help, Marguerite said, the words clearly costing her. We lost everything. The house, the business, everything. We have nowhere to go. And you came to me? Your family, Richard said. You have to help us. Elara looked at them, the people who'd made her life hell, who'd taken everything from her, who'd tried to destroy her marriage and her reputation. They stood in her entrance hall begging for mercy. Every survival instinct screamed to turn them away, to let them suffer as they'd made her suffer. Mrs. Holloway, Elara called. The housekeeper appeared immediately. Prepare rooms in the West Wing, 3 of them, basic furnishings. Marguerite's eyes widened. You're letting us stay? Temporarily. While you find work and make other arrangements. Elara's voice was firm. But understand this. You're here as guests, not family. You'll be respectful to the staff. You'll help with household tasks to earn your keep, and you will not speak ill of me, my husband, or this house. Break those rules and you're gone immediately. Are we clear? We're clear, Marguerite whispered. Good. Mrs. Holloway will show you to your rooms. As they followed the housekeeper upstairs, Isabel looked back. Why are you helping us? After everything we did to you. Elara met her eyes. Because I'm not you, and I never will be. That night she told Caspian what she'd done. You took them in, he said, voice neutral. For now. Until they can stand on their own. They don't deserve your kindness. No, but that's the difference between us and them. She leaned against him on the library settee. I won't become cruel just because cruelty was done to me. You're a better person than I am, Caspian said. I would have turned them away. Maybe. But you would have understood why I didn't. She looked up at him. That's why this works. We balance each other. We do. He kissed her forehead. Have I told you today that I love you? 3 times, but I'll never get tired of hearing it. Good. Because I plan to say it for the next 50 years. Only 50? Fine. 60, 70, however long we have. Elara smiled, feeling the absolute certainty of being loved, being chosen, being seen. 1 year ago, she'd been invisible, a girl who inherited nothing, who expected nothing, who was nothing in the eyes of everyone who mattered. Now she was the Duchess of Ashford, a woman who'd transformed pain into purpose, who'd turned a contract into a love story, who'd claimed her worth and refused to apologize for it. The girl who inherited nothing had discovered the only inheritance that mattered, herself, her strength, her courage, her capacity to love and be loved. And the man who'd had everything had learned that wealth and titles meant nothing without someone to share them with. That love wasn't something to fear, but something to fight for. Together, they'd built something neither could have built alone. A partnership, a family, a home where invisible girls learned to be seen, where broken people learned to be whole, where love wasn't a transaction, but a choice made new every day. What are you thinking? Caspian asked, watching her face. That I'm happy, Elara said simply. For the first time in my life, I'm genuinely, completely happy. Good. He pulled her closer. Because you deserve happiness. You deserve everything. I already have everything, she said. I have you. Outside, the sun set over Ashford Manor, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. In the East Wing, 50 girls ate dinner and dreamed of futures they'd never imagined possible. In the West Wing, 3 people who'd learned cruelty began learning kindness. And in the library, 2 people who'd been bound by contract and freed by choice held each other and built a future one quiet moment at a time. The girl who inherited nothing had become the woman who owned her worth. And in doing so, she'd inherited everything that mattered. Love freely given, purpose hard won, and the knowledge that she was enough, not despite her past, but because of everything she'd survived to become who she was. That was the true inheritance, and it could never be taken away.